Labour MP for Aberystwyth, Stephen Kinnock, thanks for joining us, because I mean, you've got some concerns about the tariffs or lack of tariffs on imports on steel. What would that mean for the huge steelworks in Port Talbot, in your constituency?
It could potentially have a very negative impact indeed, because the tariffs that we have, whilst they're low, it's only at 0.8%. If you cut that 0.8% to 0%, you are essentially opening the floodgates to hundreds of thousands of tons of cheap, heavily subsidized steel from countries like China, Turkey, Ukraine, and that could potentially crush the British steel industry. It's a very competitive global industry operating at those fine margins, so a cut from 0.8% to 0% might not sound like much, but could be a game changer.
Sure, but the government has got to think about all the manufacturing businesses in the UK that need to buy steel to make stuff. It's not a government just for Port Talbot, is it? There are manufacturing businesses all over Britain that need a supply of cheap or affordable steel.
The British steel industry is the backbone of our manufacturing sector, and the steel workers in my constituency and right across the country, they are absolutely vital for our entire manufacturing sector. We make the best steel in the world, and we sell it to companies like Jaguar Land Rover and Nissan to make cars in our country, which also produce thousands and thousands of jobs. So the idea that you could do something that would damage the steel industry that doesn't have a knock-on effect to the rest of the manufacturing sector is frankly ridiculous. We've got to protect the entire manufacturing sector, give it a chance to compete globally, not send it into the global marketplace with one hand tied behind its back.
OK, well, I'm sure you'd say then that's another reason for MPs this evening to vote against leaving the EU with no deal. I mean, what's your prediction? How's that vote going to go?
Well, I think that the hard right of the Conservative Party is going to get crushed this evening, and it's about time too. They have been the tail that's been wagging the dog for far too long. There are very, very few MPs in Parliament who think that we should leave the European Union without a deal. The opportunity tonight, particularly because the Prime Minister has given a free vote to her side, is that we can isolate those fantasists and nationalists who think you can leave with no deal, and we can actually show that that there is a clear and strong parliamentary majority for leaving with a deal.
Well, yes, but what kind of deal? I mean, if the vote last night told us anything, it's that there is no majority for any kind of deal in the House of Commons. So you take no deal off the table, it doesn't really give people any clarity on where we go next, does it?
The fundamental error the Prime Minister's made from the start is to not realise that actually there's a cross-party majority for what some might call a soft Brexit. I mean, that's something I've been campaigning for more than 2 years. There are different sorts of soft Brexit, but I've been saying that we should take the Norway option, go into the European Economic Area, add a form of customs union into that. You have frictionless, seamless trade. You leave the political institutions, you leave the ever closer union, none of that stuff about a European army and the things that aren't popular with the British people, but you keep that close trading relationship. We call it Common Market 2.0. The way to get that is to have indicative votes next week which show that there can be a parliamentary majority for that option, and then the Prime Minister has to pivot to take that option.
Easy for you as a Labour MP to attack the Conservative government, but a lot of your Labour colleagues very dismayed that Jeremy Corbyn didn't say anything about a second referendum, another Brexit referendum last night. Now, I know you don't want that second referendum, but what was your reaction to what Jeremy Corbyn said? Do you think he got it about right, even though he's obviously dismayed many people in your party?
I think Jeremy's right to believe and see that a second referendum would be deeply divisive. I don't really buy into this idea that you can have a referendum to reunite our deeply divided country. It's a bit like trying to put out a fire in your house by putting petrol on the flames. We need a
But if Parliament can't sort it out, and it doesn't seem as if it can, then why not go back to the people and have another public vote?
Well, look, whatever is on the ballot paper, there has to be a choice. So if you're going to have a second referendum, it can't be Remain versus Remain. It has to be a form of leaving the EU. So what I'm suggesting to my colleagues who are campaigning for a second referendum is, let's get this over the line. Let's get a deal that Parliament can vote for. That's the form of Brexit we get. And if we then end up having a debate about putting that to a referendum, well, we can have that. But they need to then table a motion proposing that. But the thing everybody can see now is Theresa May's deal is dead in the water. Parliament has to agree on a form of leaving, not only because we've got to give certainty and stability back to the country, but also for those who may wish to have a second referendum, there has to be a leave option on the ballot paper. So let's actually have some common sense, pragmatism. It's time for British politics to rediscover the lost art of compromise.
Okay, Stephen Kinnock, thanks very much for joining us.